We've been building historic cities from around the world.
We've been playing Cities by Devir. Hi, I'm Libby, this is Julian, and together we are BoxedMeeples. And yes, we have been playing Cities, the new game from Devir, and we're going to tell you 5 reasons why we've really enjoyed this game and why it might be something you might want to check out.
So in Cities, as the name would suggest, we're going to be building 8 famous cities from around the world. And the city we're going to be constructing is slightly reflective of the real life city that's so familiar to all of us.
Yeah, you have these global objectives in the city that you choose to play. So each one's obviously giving you some variety. For example, in New York City, you're having to sort of build out in that sort of famous block sort of way where all of the avenues are in lines. You're also building Central Park, so you get extra points for having the more green parky areas than you would for perhaps sort of watery areas in maybe Venice and City and things. So they are themed along with the cities, which I think really adds to that theme that you're doing and does add to the variety in the game where you can really be trying to achieve something different each time you play.
And as the game progresses, you're going to be picking up individual objective cards. Interestingly, each one of those is named. So each of the different colours of buildings that you're going to be placing on your 3x3 city map has a different association. So yellow being residential, there's commercial, there's kind of industrial type buildings. So as you have different objectives, you might be building up kind of a residential tower, for example, and you'll see that building on your map. So as you look down, the little skyscrapers begin constructing and you have little buildings around, say, a lake, and you can kind of slightly visualize what's being constructed, which I think is lovely in taking it away from those more abstract style games. It really feels like you're actually genuinely building a city.
Yeah, I really like one of the objectives for Sydney, where you have to obviously have some water space because the harbour area is very famous there. And one of the objectives is that you have to build a 1-size building, a 2-size building, a 3-size building, and a 4-size building around that water area. And so in my head, it feels like the different heights of the Sydney Opera House. So yeah, really going in with the theme of that city for those goals, which is lovely.
It's lovely kind of attention to detail we don't see enough in games. So it just feels more like the theme and the actions you're taking are really tied together.
So this game really has a sort of get there first mechanic to it. On the board, you're going to have an option of one of 4 things that you're going to pick up, and you have to pick one of each of them up each round. One will be a new scoring objective, one's another tile to add to your board, one will be ornaments that will go in the parks or the water areas, and of course you've got these buildings to be stacking up and building your buildings on the appropriate areas of your tiles. So it really does matter which you get to first and when in this game, because someone else will take what you want from underneath you, and you're never going to get that perfect selection from what comes up each round of, all right, I want that one, that one, that one, that one. You're not going to get all of them.
No.
Well, it's unlikely.
When I start playing, the first thing I do is look at the options available, knowing that I'm going to get 2 from each row, and then mentally kind of prioritising an order for those things I want. Now, often
that's 2 from each row in a two-player game.
In a 4-player game, you're getting 1 from each row, but you're going to play for longer. In a 3-player game, there'd be 1 left over. But often you can see 2 things that you desperately need, and you have to work out, how do I get both of those without giving away to my opponent what I'm trying to do? Because there is a temptation to see what your opponent's doing, get onto their game plan, and swooping, take an objective you know they are going to need, which is why being able to pick first is so desirable. And that's an option that you can place on one of the options for picking up city tiles. It does mean you're going to get 2 random city construction blocks, but it does mean you're going to have first pick. And particularly as the game progresses and you have certain things in mind, having that ability to go first is actually a big draw.
Yeah, but what's really interesting in this game is that you're not just building areas and then they're going to score. So you can't just build a big park and hopefully get the objective for the park, and that will be your scoring. The ornaments play a huge part in this because you have to place either the water or the park ornaments on the the correct spaces, and you have to have different versions of those ornaments in each of the selected areas in order for them to score. So that really brings that sort of layering aspect. You're not just placing down the tile and trying to achieve that thing. You've then also got to put something else above that in order to get the scores that you want. And obviously the same with the buildings, you're getting those on top of those tiles as well and trying to meet up with those objectives. But you've got global scoring, you've got park and water area scoring, and you've got your individual scoring objectives that you're picking up each round as well. So combining those is really lovely.
And don't dismiss the desire to have the kind of reset tile, which you can pick up from the ornaments display. If you pick up buildings that you can't place, you aren't able to place them. They get discarded. So having just a blank square, which just becomes like a wild card for buildings, always gives you that option of being able to build where you need to. And also, if you're heading towards the end game and you've got certain objectives that says build a building of each colour, having that blank space will give you the opportunity to build, the ones you aren't able to do because they just haven't come up on the tile selection display.
Yeah, it does add to the variety of possibilities that you have as you're trying to make your different scorings work together, for sure.
To do really well on cities, you need to start getting some synergies going. Ideally, you want to pick up individual missions, those objectives that just affect you, that work with the global objectives, because if you're aiming to complete those, and you're on the way, you are completing individual ones that are going to score at the end of the game, you're going to be doing really, really well. And there is that kind of incentive to complete the global missions first because there's such a big drop in the points if you don't, particularly in a two-player game, which is why the focus then has to be on how do I make all of these objectives work together and while achieving, stepping away from that global goal if it's been achieved.
Yes. I find with a lot of these kind of sort of tile placement and building out kind of games, it's very much about, right, complete this shape, do this thing, and then get points for it. Whereas in cities, it's very much, how can I make all of these things work together so that I can score well at the end of the game? It's not about just make this shape, excellent, that one's done, now move on to the next. You've got to keep every scoring thing in mind throughout and try and make them all work together the best you can. I mean, the last game that we played, I somehow managed to get scoring objectives for yellow at 2 height, yellow at 3 height, and yellow at 4 height. Now, obviously yellow, that's great, but you can't have them be every height all together. So those don't work together. But then when you manage to get, any colour at 2 height and blue at 2 height and red at 2 height, and then maybe you get another card that's any colour at 2 height and you're matching them all together and making them all score for you more than once, that's when it's really working. What I love about cities is the hidden tiles at the end. So on every row, there's a sort of a surprise version, a mystery version of the scoring objective, the tile that's building out into your city, the ornaments, and of course, as you were mentioning earlier, if you take that first player, you do pull 2 buildings from the bag, so they're a surprise too. So there's always that sort of sense of jeopardy. What's under there? Is it going to help me? Is it going to be worse than what's on the board? Should I risk it? Should I not? And I think that adds so much fun to this game. And everyone's always, whenever kind of, particularly if it's the goals or the tile, what is it? What have you got? What's it? Is it good? Is it bad? Would I have wanted it? And it really adds some spice.
Yeah, because you have that choice, even in a 2-player mode. Do you go for the safe option? Do you go for the ones you can see, but that might not help you out, but it could be better than this complete mystery one? And just having that when you're feeling that maybe you're lagging behind, maybe just grabbing this tile will give me the leg up to achieve the last remaining global goal, or maybe picking up this, the personal objective. Perhaps that might be the same as one I've already got, and I'm going to double down on this score. It's an interesting dilemma of, do I grab the mystery? Do I take that risk? Which you don't expect to see in these kind of tile placing games. Usually it's kind of quite prescriptive. You know exactly what you need to do throughout the game. So this kind of feels like a rogue element. Lots of people are going to be interested in Cities simply because of its pedigree. You've got Phil Walker-Harding and you've got Steve Finn coming together to create a very accessible, very quick to play, fantastic game.
Yeah, I feel like this game is very welcoming. The rules are literally four little pages.
Sheets, yeah.
It's quite easy and quick to explain. It's very quick to table, and so although it's bringing something that we love as very frequent gamers, it's a game that I could take to my parents' house and say, "Oh, do you fancy building Rio de Janeiro?" We're not going this year, so let's build it instead. And they'd be up for it. It's a theme that they'll connect with, and it's also easy for them to pick up what they're doing. They're taking one thing from each round, and trying to do the best they can. And because of the way that each round you're getting a new objective, it kind of eases you into that layering of how to best score for it.
I feel like it's really taken the strengths of both those designers. You've got the simple tile laying. You've got the king of the fillers working here to create a game that you can play at the end of the night, at the beginning of the night, warming up, ending your game on a real high. And I just love the fact that it has that kind of hidden depth. It's so many, you hear it so often that it's simple to play but has variability in it. You're only going to have those 8 objectives from the game. There's a whole variety you're going to have, so you don't really know what's going to have. And as we've talked about, making the game work for you and what you're individually trying to do is actually really complex. And there's such a vast decision space to choose within that it quickly can feel like, oh, I desperately need that to make this magic spell work.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, we were playing with Sydney the other day, and it turns out the way that the ornaments and things had come out, we weren't actually able to fulfill one of those scoring objectives because of what's come out. But of course, next time we play Sydney, it could be that we can fulfill all 3 of them, or one of us can, one of the other one doesn't manage it, who knows, or that there's a different one of them that is trickier to us than it was this time. So even though there's 8 cities to play, each time you play them and each things that come out as they hit the board will make every game different.
And it's a game I can think has got so much potential for the future. I think there's going to be more coming from this in the future, and I just can't wait to see different cities and see what clever mechanics they have for each individual one.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of cities in the world after all. Who knows? So that's our 5 reasons why we've really enjoyed playing Cities by Devir, and we hope that's helped you gauge whether it might be the game for you or not.
It's been a game that's been on our radar since the beginning of the year, and it's so great that it did live up to those expectations. I mean, we've played lots of different kind of city builders, town builders, and to be honest, this one eclipses them all. It's going to be a game you want to keep an eye out for.
Yes, and of course, if you've enjoyed watching us, then I am Libby, this is Julian, we are BoxedMeeples, and if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, we would love it if you would do so. And of course, we'd love to hear your comments down below, and tell us, are you excited for Cities? Have you had a chance to play it yet? I know it was out on tables at UK Games Expo this year, and it's been at other places like Mexico for other events. So what do you think of this kind of city tile building kind of games? We would love to hear from you.
And of course, a good place to buy games like this is your local game store, and for us in the southeast of England, that is Chaos Cards. But don't worry, if you're not in the southeast of England, at a city in the southeast of England, you can shop online at Chaos Cards Online, and we have a discount code in the description you can use to save yourself some money at the checkout.
You can indeed.
But as always, thank you so much for watching.
Bye.